Did you ever notice how when the word billionaire is mentioned, it instantly makes you picture private jets, super yachts and glass-walled penthouses, but almost never a prison cell? And yet, for some of the richest people on earth, the real flex wasn't what they bought, it was what they thought they could get away with, until they couldn't. There's a massive difference between making billions and keeping them clean. The higher you climb, the easier it is to start treating rules like suggestions. Tax games, insider whispers, backroom favors, creative accounting that looks brilliant right up until the day it doesn't. And when the spotlight finally swings your way, the math changes fast. It doesn't matter how many zeros sit in your net worth, handcuffs fit everyone. So today, we're counting down 10 billionaires who ended up in jail, from boardroom kings who built empires on paper-thin lies, to global scandal architects who try to outrun the consequences. We're talking corporate fraud, political corruption, insider trading, Ponzi schemes, and financial crimes so huge they didn't just wreck companies, they shook entire countries. First up, Bernie Madoff. Once one of the most trusted figures on Wall Street, and the man behind what's widely known as the largest Ponzi scheme in history. On the outside, Madoff lived the billionaire blueprint: Manhattan luxury, yachts, elite circles, and the kind of reputation money can't buy, until he realized it was bought with deception. His investment empire swindled clients out of nearly $65 billion in paper losses, wiping out individuals, charities, and institutions that believed they were safe because the name was famous. Then came 2009. The facade collapsed. Madoff confessed, and the sentence was brutal: 150 years in prison. He died behind bars in 2021, but his legacy lives on as the ultimate warning. When greed becomes the business model, the fall isn't just personal, it's nuclear. Next up, imagine being rich enough to own everything and still choosing a lie that destroys thousands of lives. Dennis Kozlowski, the once billionaire CEO of Tyco International, infamous for turning corporate funds into a personal luxury pipeline. At Tyco's peak, the empire was worth over $100 billion, and Kozlowski's lifestyle became its own headline. The $6,000 shower curtain, the $1 million parties, the over-the-top spending that made it feel like Tyco wasn't a company, it was a billionaire's ATM. But behind the glamour was embezzlement. Kozlowski and CFO Mark Schwartz were convicted in 2005 for stealing over $150 million through unauthorized bonuses and fraudulent stock sales. He served 6.5 years in prison. And here's the lesson. It wasn't the wealth that took him down, it was the entitlement, the belief that the rules were for employees, not executives. Third, Raj Rajaratnam. The Sri Lankan-born billionaire, founder of the Galleon Group hedge fund. Rajaratnam built Galleon into one of Wall Street's largest hedge funds, managing over $7 billion. He was treated like a financial wizard until federal investigators revealed he was allegedly trading on confidential corporate information, making tens of millions illegally. This case became famous because it was high-tech law enforcement meeting high-level finance, wiretaps, informants, corporate leaks, proof that even billionaire genius can be traced like a phone signal. He was convicted on 14 counts of insider trading and sentenced in 2011 to 11 years, the longest insider trading sentence in US history at the time. He was released early in 2019, still wealthy but permanently branded. If you're already rich, why risk everything for an advantage you don't even need? Fourth, Alan Stanford. Once celebrated as a financial visionary with a globe-spanning banking empire and a reputation that screamed legitimacy. To the outside world, he looked like the definition of success: wealthy, connected, and operating at an international level. But prosecutors argued Stanford's fortune wasn't built on brilliance, it was built on deception. Through Stanford Financial Group, he marketed what appeared to be safe, high-yield certificates of deposit and sold them as if they were rock-solid investments. Investigators said the products were essentially a sham and that investors were scammed out of more than $7 billion. Meanwhile, Stanford lived like royalty: private jets, yachts, and mansions scattered across the Caribbean, luxury financed by other people's trust. When the scheme collapsed, the image of paradise turned into a courtroom nightmare. In 2012, Stanford was convicted on 13 counts, including fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering, and sentenced to 110 years in prison. His story is like a tropical mirror of Madoff: prestige, power, and paradise, ending in a cell. Fifth, the billionaire fugitive behind 1MDB, Joe Low. Low wasn't born into billionaire status. Prosecutors say he built the image through one of the largest global financial scandals in modern history. Billions allegedly siphoned from Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund. According to investigators, the money didn't just vanish, it allegedly transformed into a roaming luxury empire. High-end real estate, elite art purchases, draw-dropping parties, private jets, and a Hollywood-adjacent lifestyle so loud it felt untouchable. The most surreal detail? Funds were reportedly linked to major entertainment ventures, including financing tied to the Wolf of Wall Street. But when the scrutiny finally tightened and law enforcement closed in, Lowe didn't fight the case in court, he vanished. Since then, it's been a shadow life. Reported sightings, international warrants, frozen assets, and a name that turned from mysterious financier to global cautionary tale. He may not be behind bars, but here's the grim twist. When the world is hunting you, the world becomes your cage. So, what's worse, being locked in a cell or living forever on the run? 6. Ike Batista, once Brazil's richest man. At his peak, he was worth an estimated $30 billion, celebrated as a symbol of national ambition. He built an energy and mining empire that promised to transform Brazil's economy until it collapsed under corruption allegations. In 2017, he was convicted of bribing government officials to secure contracts and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Authorities seized luxury cars, yachts, mansions. His companies imploded. He served part of his sentence before receiving house arrest while legal battles continued. Batista's fall is one of the fastest modern collapses of extreme wealth, proof that a billionaire lifestyle is often just a skyscraper built on confidence. Once confidence cracks, everything comes down. 7th, Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF. The face of crypto's biggest downfall and the scandal that defined the entire era. At his peak, he was everywhere, magazine covers, Washington meetings, and the image of a quirky genius who wanted to do good. But after FTX collapsed in 2022, prosecutors argued the real story was a massive multi-year fraud. They said he siphoned billions in customer deposits and routed it to his hedge fund, Alameda Research, using it to cover losses, making risky trades, buy luxury real estate in the Bahamas, and bankroll political donations. The illusion snapped during a liquidity crunch when withdrawal requests exposed what investigators described as an $8 billion hole. The collapse triggered panic across the industry and turned SBF from wunderkind to defendant. In late 2023, he was convicted on 7 counts, including wire fraud and money laundering, and later sentenced to 25 years in prison. The chilling part is the contrast. Publicly, he preached effective altruism. Privately, prosecutors said he treated customer money like a personal piggy bank. 8th, Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. Holmes sold the world a futuristic promise. A single finger prick, just a few drops of blood, and suddenly you could run hundreds of medical tests, faster, cheaper, and easier than any traditional lab. Investors rushed in, partnerships followed, and the media crowned her the next great Silicon Valley visionary. The branding was flawless, the black turtlenecks, the deep voice confidence, the changed the world storyline, and a valuation that soared into the billions. But behind the curtain, the miracle machine couldn't deliver what was being advertised. Theranos allegedly leaned on standard lab equipment and internal workarounds while continuing to pitch the invention as a functioning breakthrough. Once investigative reporting blew the story open, the hype collapsed into investigations, courtrooms, and criminal charges. In January 2022, Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy, and later sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. It's the ultimate reminder. In business, perception can be priceless until reality arrives with receipts. 9th, J.Y. Lee, executive chairman of Samsung Electronics and heir to the Samsung empire. Lee served a total of 18 months in prison across 2 stints related to a major South Korean corruption scandal. He was convicted of bribing then-President Park Geun-hye and a confidant to secure government support for a merger that strengthened his control of the conglomerate. He was arrested in 2017, sentenced, released, then sent back in 2021 after retrial developments. He was later released on parole and eventually received a full presidential pardon in 2022, with the government citing economic concerns. This story is the clearest example of how billionaire justice can become complicated. Even when the bars close, the system can still open doors. Is prison still prison when you can be pardoned back into power? 10th, and the most extreme case on this list, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Not your typical white-collar criminal. El Chapo led the Sinaloa cartel, and was so influential that Forbes once estimated his net worth at $1 billion, placing him on its billionaire list due to the scale of his trafficking empire. His downfall played out like a movie: multiple dramatic escapes, one in a laundry cart, another through a tunnel, before his final arrest, extradition to the US, and conviction in 2019 on charges including drug trafficking and money laundering. He's now serving life imprisonment plus 30 years in a high-security US federal prison, with prosecutors arguing his operation was defined by extreme violence and massive corruption, plus a forfeiture order exceeding $12.6 billion. It's the darkest reminder that the word billionaire doesn't always come from business. Sometimes it comes from an empire built on fear. And that brings us to the real takeaway. From Wall Street to Brazil to Silicon Valley, these stories prove one thing: money may buy power, but it can't buy immunity. These people once controlled industries, influenced governments, and shaped economies, but greed, pride, and corruption brought them crashing down. Some into cells, some into exile, some into disgrace they'll never escape. Now, I want to hear from you. Which billionaire downfall surprised you the most? And which one do you think got the most billionaire treatment when it came to consequences? Drop it in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the world of extreme wealth, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, even in a golden cell, the bars still close.